Oh God. All right, it's
So we
happening.
should be live now. Let's see if YouTube chat starts coming in.
Yeah, IDG screenshot ain't great. Damn, I got hit by an ad trying to monitor our own screen.
Amazing.
Oh well.
Maybe I should tweet about this happening. Uh,
Maybe. Oh
that
yeah,
would
this
be
stream
that would
quality
be
ain't
smart.
great. Wonder if wonder if it'll kill me to try 720p here. Yeah, this stream quality isn't the most amazing in the world. Not gonna lie. But it's fine.
Okay, the tweet has gone out about it.
Doo-doo-doo. Oh shoot, what the heck happened to the computer? Go back. Go back. There we go. Let's see. Put this there. Put that.
Hello, YouTube people. Yeah, the quality is backed, so that's nice. It looks good. My mouse disappeared again. That is.
I see your mouse.
I mean, that's good. I don't see Where did it go? There it is. Okay.
Right, I'm gonna have to try and split this up. How do people like monitor all these different screens when they're streaming? I'll never understand.
I have no idea. Kind of crazy. So I can only make my Discord this big, so I have to monitor the actual stream by making it like that, I guess. Okay. Person in YouTube chat says I cannot understand a single thing I see on my screen. Yep, that was the goal. Mission accomplished.
I'm like trying to move my screen around, but yeah, I'm not sure if my streaming is working all the way into YouTube. Not gonna lie. Looks okay in Discord. I'm like zooming in and out of the playlist, and I'm not seeing it in the YouTube stream.
That might be because I'm not seeing it on mine either. Oh, there it is. Maybe did I close out of an accident? Let me just see. Do it again. Do it again. Okay,
Zooming in.
it's showing.
There we
It's
go.
showing up in OBS now. Okay.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, great.
Cool. All right. Let's get started. So we're just kind of winging it. Infinity at some point in, I think it was January, like late December, early January. When is that when you first sent me the first version of your kind of what you had?
Yeah, it was around the time when I was asking you about. So I had heard about, right. So Dreamwood 2022 was the big set thing, right?
Right.
That was the if you all didn't see on YouTube, I posted like the 30-minute video that we showed at the live event. And like basically it was the day Howell told me about it. And I was like, oh well, I've never like I'd like to do a set, but I haven't done one before. I don't feel confident that I could put one together. So I was like, okay, what if I just asked someone who wasn't entirely involved in this thing like last year, and you were the first person to come in my head, and I was like, hello, Moto, do you want to do it? Do you want to do a cool thing together? And then we dreamt up a crazy collab after that, basically.
I remember I'll play originally what Infinity first sent me, and we can use this as a test to make sure the stream is working.
Yeah.
But basically, he sent me what starts here in measure 6 and went to around here at measure 33. So let's play that. basically how the project started from my point of view. Like I had no idea what it sounded like before that, and obviously, some of these effects and stuff came in later, but that was essentially what the project was in its beginning.
Yep.
Um,
So,
and so,
backstory on mine about that. Basically, I wrote this small doodle in like September of last year, and I pitched it to Lightbender's people, Stardew, you saw, and everyone was like, "Cool," and that was it. That was the end of it. Yeah. I had doodled it like basically right after I acquired Contact. I just decided to like shill a bunch of money because like might as well. And I purchased Contact and started like doodling some stuff. And this is one of the first things I wrote with the new instruments I had.
so if actually look into this, I'm gonna switch views. Like everything here, all the real instruments are like Infinity just using the default, like this Contact Factory library. All this stuff is Contact Factory library. Like every single one of these, it's all Contact Factory library, and it's really quite impressive. Like I didn't have this library before Infinity introduced it, and I was honestly quite impressed at how pretty good it sounded for a default library, right? So I just kind of went with it from there, and continued using those instruments. This intro that we had this intro came like way later in the process, but let's yeah, if you're on the Discord, just ignore the glitched upstream. Don't that doesn't. So what is there to say about this, right? So the fundamental idea here is pretty simple. You have it's a waltzy pattern 6/4. The BPM is programmed at 76 BPM, which is really quite slow, right? I usually don't program that slowly, so it was kind of hard for me to get used to. Like for example, if let's
Yeah,
find
you write like fast stuff, right?
Yeah, I do. I usually do things like even if it's like a halftime stuff, like I usually do it in 150 plus, right? But at
Yeah,
76, you have to basically half all of your composition. So normally at 150, this snare would be on like the third beat, right? But here you have to quite slow. Oh, I just realized you can't actually see my piano roll. Ooh, okay.
Ooh, funny.
Well, that's no good. Anyway, but you can imagine how this.
Oh no.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. Shit, that's not it. Piano roll. There we go.
Oh, I've got a black
Now you
screen.
can
That's nice. Okay,
there we go. Here's the
amazing,
piano roll. Okay.
amazing, amazing.
So, yes, you can see here's the drum beat, right? And so to me, that's like absurdly slow how that line is moving across the screen. And also everything's in triplets. So let's just move it to the triplets here. You can see everything's in triplet time. And there's a lot of like 1/6 beat quantizations because again, it's in slow. Like if it was 150 BPM, you just do 1/3 beats. But here we do 1/6 beat because it's twice as slow. So essentially, I guess there are a few interesting things here in this first section that Infinity, even like from the very beginning, one thing I noticed that Infinity did was you can look here at this kind of djembe piece. So if we just solo this pattern. So it's a nice pattern, right? But one thing he did, which I think is kind of clever, is there's this factory has like two versions of, well, it's not really two versions of the same drums, but he had one pattern here on the top, and he doubled it on this bottom octave here, and it's a little bit of delay, right? And it creates a nice kind of what can I say? Like a kind of spaciness also makes it sound like an actual ensemble playing the drums instead of just one person playing the drums, which is nice. How is my velocity on the top? There is there's a setting in here somewhere that does that. I forgot where,
Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure.
you click the button that says display it cool and have it on the top.
Sure. I'm sure that's exactly what it says, but it's somewhere in here. Swap panels, that's the one. Swap panels. So now it also is back on the bottom, but I like it on the top, so I put it on the top. All right, back to the playlist. So pretty simple stuff here, and then like I'm pretty sure Infinity, you basically like, if you actually look carefully at this piano here, right? If I show just the piano piece here, like I'm pretty sure that you like recorded this live,
Yeah.
right? You had a MIDI controller and you just banged this out,
Yeah, pretty much.
which is
I mean,
which is, you know,
it takes a couple, like I usually sit down on the piano and like play through a concept a few times until like something solidifies, and then I record it. But basically I just like played this. It didn't come out this clean. I obviously adjusted stuff afterwards. If you one of these days I will put out like one of these days I will put out just like as a thought experiment, like the raw recording of me playing it, so you can see how untimed it is. Like I get basically like entire half notes off the main beat, and then I have to bring everything back. It's really funny. But yeah.
I mean, if it works, eventually it worked, right? Because like it sounds good. And like this rhythm here, this waltz pattern in this piano ended up being basically the backbone for the entire track.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right, because I heard that and I was like, wow, that's like definitely the defining idea for the whole thing. And then there's like obviously these really nice chords here in this section here. We have like this and those are just some great chords. I mean, we can talk about them if people are interested, but let's move on. Yeah, those are some great chords.
Pretty. Yeah, I mean, so partly I steal from my Olophone very often. So partly that motion is Mayo does that same motion in one of his piano compositions that he wrote, like the Moon Bunny or something. I think that's the name of it. Where he does this like kind of upward thing, and then puts something in the middle, and then does it again in a different key, which is basically what the same thing is happening here.
Hey, look, there's Mayo.
What's up, Maya? Maya's in the Discord chat.
There he is. I mean, if you look carefully, it's this chord is the same as this chord. It's the same as that chord. This one's a little different, but like you transpose the same chord a little bit up a bit, so you can think of this as like parallel movement, kind of, but it's not really.
Yeah.
And here's like a little bit of, there's some differences here. Like this is not really parallel, but the same movement exists, right? And I'm sure if you want to play around with this idea more, there's so many possibilities here, and so so that's a lot of fun. All right, back to, so after he sent me this like section, right? I was like, all right, I what I normally do whenever I get a new kind of project to collaborate on is someone else sends me an idea, and then it's kind of like my first go at the project. What I'll do is first I'll look at exactly, okay, here's what instruments that the other person used, and I'll look at okay, what are the fundamental ideas and what are kind of like the fundamental instruments that are being used. So I thought, okay, well, obviously I can't just like, if I were to add a new section, I can't just turn it into like some really synth-based thing. Right? I can't just add dubstep at the end. That just doesn't make sense. So I thought, okay, what can I do? The best thing I can do is say, okay, so if we assume that what Infinity sent me was like the beginning of a track, what would the rest of the track be? What would the rest of the story of the song be? And so I decided to try something new, which was, if you've ever read the there's like fundamentals of storytelling, right? There's a guy named Dan Harmon. He's the writer for Rick and Morty and a lot of other TV shows. But at some point in time, he put out a long article basically saying his entire storytelling kind of process. And the fundamental process there is there are 8 parts to a story. And they're the same 8 parts that you can learn about if you read about archetypes in high school. But there's the introduction, the exposition, and then there's like at some point a crossing of the barrier to start the story. right? And so I thought, okay, well, this stuff all sounds kind of homey, right? It's comfortable. And then here you hear like maybe something starting to be a little weird. There's something happening. So at some point, so obviously, if there was a crossing of the threshold to happen in a story, it would be right here at the end of what Infinity Emperor sent me. So I thought, okay, well, it's time to go on a journey with our chords. So I decided to write a chord progression that was, well, that would give the idea of a journey, right? And so if we go, I might have deleted it, but at first, all these chords were just me again, just playing put together stuff, whole note chords, trying to figure out okay, what's a progression that'll work, and then everything around it, all the rhythms, all the melodies came after that, right? And so the fundamental chords you can kind of still see here in this pattern, and they sound like this, and it's missing the bass. The bass is in a different pattern. Normally, this is a pretty simple kind of idea, but you want the chords that you have that are long notes to not actually have the root note in them. It helps free up more space for the actual colors for the chords. So that's like part one of the beginning of the journey. Why is it called Still? Yeah, Infinity is. It's basically we're trying to like invoke an idea of like someone having to go on a journey that they didn't necessarily want to go on, and so we were trying to like brainstorm ideas of okay, what kind of words could we use that give off that feeling, and eventually we just came up with that, right? And
Yeah.
whether or not it works, you can interpret it however you want. It's like designed to be super ambiguous and vague.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
it's like what's on the Lord tablet. Anything could be on it. It's whatever you think it is. There is a sort of like vague embodiment of some kind of capricious force at the top, but like it's whatever. It's not concrete or anything. I mean, I think generally like in music storytelling, you want to leave that kind of thing open, but have this like I don't know. It's really much a sort of like you have this big sort of abstract idea, and then you let listener make it into a more concrete form.
exactly what he said. And then I wanted to like start at this point in the composition. I knew that I wanted to like introduce a motif, right? Something that would be at least a little bit catchy. Simple, like if you listen to a lot of the stuff I do, there are usually an attempt to make like a really nice, simple, catchy kind of melody somewhere. So I said, okay, well, if there was ever a time to introduce something like that, it'd be here. And so that's why this melody with like the simple repeating notes comes in, because repeating notes means it automatically becomes more catchy, right?
Yeah, this is
Um,
the this is the law of Chicory: A Colorful Tale.
basically.
Yeah.
So this is that melody, right? It's this guy down here. So we want to talk about that section a little bit. There's like tons of effects and stuff, but there's actually not that many effects. It sounds
Yeah.
like there is, but really it's just this is like a nice little bass. And then here's a recording I did a long time ago of a park somewhere. It's just some nice atmosphere. The chorus themselves, I want to say like I wrote a lot of these, but I know Infinity at some point went in and really
Yeah,
made these
so
real colorful.
I left so that the section before this one where you went on a weird journey and like a whole different key center and like it just go and like the chord progression just wanders everywhere. I left that mostly alone because I was like, oh, this is so good. It's like really nice. It conveys the idea really perfectly. And then over here, like this idea, I came after it was like, okay, that's it's it's like something different, but it's also going to lead up into this big thing. So we need to have some stuff that brings it there. And so I just like put some big synth brass stuff underneath it with some weird notes.
Let's talk about the synth brass for a bit. Let me find the. Oh my god, what the hell?
Oh, what? Okay.
Okay, so let me see if this is So, one thing I learned about Infinity is that he loves his synth brathy sounding things, right?
Yeah.
So here's one example. I wonder, like for example, that. Now that's an Infinity sound right there,
Yeah.
right?
This is a preset that
Yeah.
I made. I only made a few of these. I don't make very many, but this is one of them. It's titled in the top. You can tell.
Yeah, Abound. Look at that, Abound. And like
I make very few of my sounds, but this is one of them that I made myself.
it's very nice. I like the Infinity
Yeah,
sound
the
a
D
lot.
flop synth brass. Yeah, that thing is literally just a saw wave with a filter on it. That's literally all it is. Like you can make it yourself. It's so easy.
But it sounds so good. So in any
Yeah.
case, so then I thought, okay, wow, there's like a nice little climax here melodically, and now it's time to actually, if there was a kind of like dubstep drop or anything like that, and now would be the time to lead into it, and so that's what we do.
That drum fill there is so good. I think that's the single most commented on section in the entire thing on SoundCloud. Not that one, but the one before it.
This one here at 82.
No, between the split the difference.
This.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one.
That part is so crazy. So basically, how this came together was Moto sent me a draft of the section initially, and it basically had these big chords, and then there was a bunch of random noodling like between them, right? It's like how it was here. How this particular part happened is I took the sort of the noodling part, right, and I gave it more structure, right. So I took like the first part of your noodling and then just like duplicated it like higher up and higher up again. We did that, and then so it sort of has a motion to it, right. And then I sent that back to you, and then you put a bunch of crazy drums on it.
Yeah, that basically sums up how this. Oh, and also at some point you had the idea to do like basically change this into. I don't know if you can see it here, but this essentially turns into 7/4.
Yeah, it's 7/4. So basically, it's 3 bars for the actual chords, and then it's four beats for the noodling stuff. I was like, okay, because you said it to me, and it was just the 6/6 thing, and I was like, it's cool, it works. These noodling parts, it could be cooler if they had a little more space. Like there's a little bit more space between it. It has some more tension. It builds for an extra beat. It's like really really unexpected, really off kilter kind of if it was extended like that. So basically, I just had an idea to extend that bar, and I mean, calling it 7/4 isn't really the whole picture. It's basically just a 6/4 bar with an extra beat attached. But it's like, yeah, when I like doing lots of like those like bar extensions. There's more of those later in the song, just like extra beats you add just to make things a little bit off. Like
It was really because like I would never have come up with the idea to like get the build up into a something to just be a different time signature
yeah.
with like a missing beat or something. But if anyone has any like questions or anything they want us to dive deeper into, please comment in the Discord or the YouTube. We'd be happy to go deeper into it.
Yeah. Generally, I feel like that's kind of like beat extensions and beat subtractions for like timing is a relatively unexplored space in like the whole space of rhythm, just like generally in the music scenes that we're in. Lots of people like playing around with like weird time signatures and stuff, right? Like that's the big thing when you think about rhythm. But like you can accomplish so much just by adding beats to a bar and removing beats to a bar. And you don't have to do any messy, crazy like, oh, I'm gonna write a beat in 11/4 and it's all like weird and stuff. You can just make that happen by adding beats, removing beats and stuff. Yeah.
There's actually a really good example of that later on, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's the drop. It's pretty simple. So, Stardew asked, "What in God's name is this waveform?" And
Yeah.
I will let me show you. Here's the waveform, and and in Infinity, when he sent me this sample, I was like, "What the what? How did you?" Okay,
Basically, I have a pack of glitch sounds in my folders from 99 Sounds like years ago, and when I was making percussion for the section, I was like, okay, let's just place like 5 glitch sounds on every single beat, and then just have it like be like that, and that's how the waveform have.
and like so it's a good sound. Like that's a nice glitchy sound, right? But the problem, turn up the all right, volume up. So the problem with this sound is that you can see there's a heck of a DC offset, right? Like and when he first sent me this, I was like, oh wow, this is actually causing a lot of clipping because the DC offset is quite large, right? Normally you want to see this kind of flat line here at the very middle, and if it's not at the middle, you can get distortion, all kinds of problems. And an easy way to fix that is just to have a nice low pass or a high pass on it, which is what this is doing. You see that if I were to, it's nice and centered now. But if I were to get rid of this EQ, then shit. If I were to get rid of that EQ and then actually play that sound again, it gets that's not the right one. It gets all weird, and you can't really see too much. But having a high pass here is actually kind of important for kind of glitch sounds like that. Another thing about, let's talk about some of the sound design, because I'm sure some people will care about that, at least a little bit. Here's whenever I make a drop, I tend to put everything into one big pattern, and you can kind of see that pattern here. Let's see if there's something here. Yes, okay. So all my bass patches are down here, and that's like the main kind of bass sound, and it's you can hear it. It's let's see. It's primarily, so all my patcher stuff looks more or less like this, more or less, because I mean there's a lot going on. But what usually tends to happen is I will have a sub part, and let me just try and actually, where is this? So here's, okay. So now if I mute that, there's no more sub, right? And so that's just only the sub right there. And so having the sub separate allows you to do whatever you want with the tops. I call it the not bass part. And yeah, complete freedom over it, and you don't have to worry about muddying up the mix. So that's something pretty fundamental. But the rest of this, I can dive deeper into this specific one. But what really makes this one work, if I can find where things are. So if I remember correctly, and I don't, because I haven't looked at this in a long time, the fundamental thing that makes this sound work is this FM being a saw. And so if you play with FM a lot, you will realize at some point that if you modulate something with a saw waveform as this FM kind of modulator signal, it will sound as if it will sound similar to the kind of sync modification. So if I, for example, do this, okay, you can't really hear it there. Okay, so it's not actually doing what I thought it would do, but that's fine. In any case, there's just a lot of yeah, what did I do here? I don't remember. It's been too long. And obviously, you can't go wrong with a little bit of noise. Notice that it sounds a lot more present with the noise on top. And obviously, there's a lot of all kinds of stuff going on here. Oh, okay, I remember now. Here's a fun tidbit. One of my favorite FX kind of plugins is the Disperser by Kilohertz. But I know that Infinity doesn't actually have the Kilohertz plugins. So what you can do to imitate that disperser is you record a click, an impulse that goes through the disperser, and you can get the impulse here. And the general idea of that impulse is essentially you phase shift a bunch of stuff, right? You can see that in this impulse signal here. And so if I disable this convolver here, you lose the dispersion. But with the disperser, it gets a nice kind of sound to it. And yeah, that's basically how the sound works. So that's a deep dive into one of these sounds. Another interesting sound, I guess, would be this one. And it's just actually, you know, this one might be too complicated to talk about right now. So let's let's move on. And then there's one more sound here that's interesting, I think. So that kind of lead sound here. Let me find
that lead sound goes really hard. You have like a bunch of events on it to make it do all that
there
crazy
it
stuff.
is. So here's the if we look at the playlist here, we need to look at the piano roll. Okay, so here is what's going on with this sound. It's actually quite a simple sound if you were to dig into it. Long story short, it's just it's just a sine wave, and it's been distorted to God. It's been absolutely destroyed in distortion. Right? If I can move over here, you can see. Oh wow, you can't actually see the internal settings of my plugins. That's unfortunate.
Amazing.
But just trust me when I say it's a sine wave that's been distorted beyond belief, right? And it's really all it is, right? If I play this, it's gonna be loud. It's just like a distortion. This is distorted sine wave, right? You can see here when you start putting notes together in distortion. You get interesting kind of colors. And so I just basically manipulate those colors, and there's a lot of, you can see the velocity here matters a lot in this case. And especially when you mix notes together, the velocity matters a ton, right? For example, here, so let me just mute this. So that, okay. Unfortunately, I can't only show that, but actually there is a way. There we go. You hear how interesting that sounds there for a little split second? And like all you hear is, that's all you hear, right? But the sound comes out from 4 notes. And so it's, you want to play around with stuff like that and really just kind of like try and figure out, okay, what are interesting ways I can manipulate the sound to do things like that? For example, this chord here, this, like if you see this in a normal, like in a normal synth, it would just be, oh yeah, it's just 2 notes, but it's not what it sounds like at all here. That's what that sounds like, right? It's insane. It doesn't make any sense, right? So you just kind of have to experiment with this and figure out, okay, how can I actually make that horrible sound kind of good in context, right? And well, the way you do that is like you can kind of pretend that it's a guitar, and like guitars when they're all distorted don't actually sound that good, but with a little bit of you counteract the really rough stuff with some more gentle stuff, and it actually ends up sounding pretty compelling. So this is what that sounds like in context. Right? It's nice. It's fine. It's loud, sure, but whatever. So that's that.
Gev asks, how do you make sure those sounds aren't too busy / overwhelming yet still interesting? Usually what I do is I put a bunch of sounds in and then remove some and hope it works.
That generally works for me as well. I tend to be extremely deliberate about my sounds. Like usually composition comes first, right? And like I'll sketch out like chords or melodies or whatever, but I'll just have the sound be a simple sine wave, right? And later down the line, you listen to that sine wave and you say, okay, what can I imagine this sound should sound like given the context of the everything else going around it, like the actual music, the chords, the melodies, whatever. And then usually I end up spending a lot of time either looking for a preset or one of my patches that I made in the past to try and match what I have in my head. Or usually what happens is I just give up and I create the sound from scratch. Which is takes a while, but it's something I really enjoy doing, so I do it.
Yeah. Usually when I take this approach, I use a piano sound, like a electric piano or something like that. And then what ends up happening a lot of the times is that piano just is still there in the end. Like,
I mean, piano will always work, right? Like that's one of those things. Like no matter what you do, you can never go wrong with the piano, and it's kind of absurd, but it's what it is. Now let's move on to this wonderful tempo change infinity ambient section.
yeah.
So I take no credit for this section. I like added stuff on top of it, but this is all infinity basically.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about it.
Free time sections are the thing that I want more people to do more often. I wrote the free time section in the Bilimoto Tulip for Genji collab. That one. I wrote free time sections for all the other all-nighter forum stuff. So I mean, putting a free time section here was a pretty obvious decision. Basically, the way this works is there's a pad that's like synth brass based again, like because you never go wrong with synth brass pads. And there's a atmospheric bass sound on top that just comes from one of my things. Not on top, on bottom. It goes under it. And you just sort of put notes in this sort of like, so we can talk about like the general harmony of it for at least a little bit. Like basically the core of the harmony in this song is like a melodic minor kind of thing, where basically like, if for people familiar with melodic minor, it's basically you have a minor scale for the first half, and then you switch to a major scale for the second half. So it's like minor at the bottom, major at the top. But in this song, we flip it over. So it's major at the bottom and minor at the top. And that produces lots of like really sort of creepy kind of chords because they're like major but not really. Like it's like has that tinge to it. And so the chords in this section and like all the other sections as well sort of revolve around the idea of, okay, we have those. Anytime you could play a major chord, just play that chord instead. Like have the top part be minor, and then everything sort of falls from there with the harmony and stuff. So a lot of these chords are doing that kind of thing where they're trying to like they take this chord, and then when I want to move down to this other chord, I just change it to match that sort of pattern.
Makes sense. I'm just looking at these notes and like, oh wow, like there's some. So this is a nice so this is an A right now, and then it's like nice and it's like whole tone, like it's not really whole tone, but it's kind of like I think that might be contributing to how it sounds nice and creepy.
Yeah.
All these like whole tones next to each other, and then at some point it converts to an F sharp, and it's a. And this is exactly what you're talking about, where it's like technically, like if you see, oh, it's an F sharp at the bottom, there's a A sharp or a B flat, whatever, and that means it's major. Technically, this is an F sharp major, but it doesn't sound like it's in major, and that's again exactly what you were talking about. All right,
and then obviously that last chord has the big like pitch descend that I'm famous for in D flat. I did that exact thing multiple times.
Okay, I'm trying to find where the actual pitch down thing is. Oh, okay, there it is. There's an event. It goes down. All right.
It just goes down.
All right, so then there's like this little bridge section here. All right, before that gets too much louder.
Yeah.
I think one thing I really want to point out here is that Infinity made this section. He drafted this section first, and he took. If you remember the quote unquote catchy melody that I made all the way back here. The same melody here, but in totally different context, and it sounds completely not cheerful, like completely different, right?
Yeah. The basic
Sorry, go on.
the basic compositional idea of the section was that it was sort of like a reprise section, right, where it needed to go sort of into this big moment afterward. So there was the other section before that had that like cheerful melody and things. I was like, okay, so I can how might I take that and transform it, right? So we can use. Luckily, I had adjusted the section right before that where I used this major minor harmony I was talking about, and you can literally do the same thing with this melody. So because the melody outlines a major chord, like at the very beginning, it outlines this A sharp, a major chord, I think, right? If you do the major minor thing under that, and then you move from there, it like you can make the melody feel very, very different. It's kind of crazy. And you can, like, people talk about like jazz reharmonization and stuff like that like all the time. This is like a super hacky way to reharmonize literally anything. You can reharmonize anything this way and make it sound completely different than how it was before. Just put major minor under it.
That's a nice major minor chord, right?
Yeah.
I think that's major. No, I think that
it's like a dominant chord, right? So it's like
yeah, that's just
it
a dominant.
has that minor component in it, but the important part is you also have to remember that there's a flat 6 in there as well as a flat 7, because that's the whole minor part at the top. And usually it's that flat 6 that adds the whole character to it. So
there it is. There's that flat 6 right there. You can hear it there. That's nice. Yes, that is a minor 6 chord exactly. And then the stuff at the end here. Oh, nice progression. The stuff, honestly, I don't.
Yeah, those chords are a lot of playing around with notes and trying to find notes that sound really good and crazy. The basic idea behind it is that you have this section, this bit that goes up, right? This goes up, and then in the middle of it, there's a bit that goes down. And you just have to. It was me a lot of me playing around with the ups and downs and figuring out which ups work with which downs, and then chords sort of spawn, weird chords sort of spawn naturally as you shift them up and down and try to find an interesting position for those.
The thing that really stuck out to me was like, yeah, you have these chromatic movements, right? And those are very nice. They make everything sound kind of natural. And yeah, you still have this like dissonance here where you literally have three notes right next to each other.
Yeah.
Like sounding by itself, that does not sound great, right? But in context, it kind of works. So yeah.
The dissonance works in a lot of places because like when you're doing this chromatic movement, people understand like intuitively that it's passing, right? So it's like, oh, you have this dissonance here, but it's obviously going somewhere, so it's obviously not resolved right now. That's totally fine. Obviously there's places where that does work and places where it doesn't work. That's what the playing around with it sort of comes down to. There are some combinations that just work better than others.
Exactly. I used to be like deathly afraid of situations like this where you just have basically blocks of notes next to each other.
Yeah.
But I've learned to love the dissonance, I guess, what you could say. All right, moving on to the beginning of the second drop, and I want to just turn the volume down just a tiny bit.
Yeah, it's pretty loud.
It's pretty loud.
Yeah.
And here we go. All right, we'll talk about that there, but this section, I don't know if there's too much to talk about here. It's like it's not the most, like it's a good chord progression, but I don't think there's too much to talk about with it. There's like some arcs and stuff, and I guess it goes a little bit kind of prog rocky with the fancy rhythm.
Yeah, so the rhythm shift is kind of funny. Basically, how it works is you have the kick drum like on threes, right? So it's like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 like that, right? So basically, you can do it where before switching to sort of fours, you sort of start the fours on the same beat as the threes, and then it's like off. It's not on the main beat anymore. It's like slightly off because you started it on the threes rather than on the fours. And then it like basically the kick drum just has this really offset feel to it, and then like when it lands later, it's like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah,
you can see it pretty clear. The four start on the and of four, so you can see how that kind of
because that's where the threes end, right? So it's like like, sort of kicks it off in a weird place.
It took a while. I'm gonna be honest. It took a while for me to get used to the way that this sounded. Yeah. But like once you like, but like once you like if you have an interesting rhythm like that, I think one thing to really think about is, okay, how can I make sure it doesn't sound like a mistake, right? That it's actually intentional. And in this case, the way we did that was we simply doubled the bass with it. You can see that there's the bass notes here, and they match the fours.
Yeah.
The kick here. Oh, also the claps. I don't know where the claps are, but they also match, so that definitely helps. All right, moving on to.
There's another thing there. There's that part with the flute in the middle. It has the marking on it. It says Magnegate. My Mystery Dungeon games are not behind me. That is an actual callback to the Magnegate theme from Gates to Infinity. The game of my childhood when I was 13. Of
course, you gotta have some quote like that in there. I mean, I don't actually know what this lick is, but it sounded cool. So like, all right, let's do it. Let's
it's basically the Magnegate lick. Like it's in every single one of the themes in the game related to this particular natural phenomenon where like you have portals that can take you from one location to another location.
Yes. The most natural of phenomena.
Yeah. Very natural, not pseudoscience-y at all.
Not at all. So this section here, I originally just composed it like just the same time signature as before, but we talked about, what if, like Infinity really likes playing with like just adding beats here and there if they fit, right? And here's a case where we found a place for that, where we just kind of stick an extra beat here. And it doesn't sound like we've actually put an extra beat there until a few bars later here, where we actually have an extra few licks that normally wouldn't fit there if that extra beat wasn't there. So here's what that sounds like. That's an interesting section.
Yeah. It's basically just like how I would notate it in the sheet thing is I would literally just put a 1/4 bar there. Like it's just one beat by itself with the section to the left and the section to the right. There's no weird time signature thing. It's not like a 5/4 bar or anything. It's just a single beat just sitting there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds nice, right? It's
yeah. It also goes into this like really crazy chord that you told me you just like sort of threw notes around until it sounded great. The chord that this plays does not exist. It's not a thing. It's crazy. It's illegal.
So you can actually see my original draft for what chords would I put here, and that's the chord. I don't know how to describe it. I just literally put down 6 notes, and I was like, "That's the chord. That'll work. We'll go with it." Honestly, this chord was way easier to come up with than this chord. Like, because I was like, okay, I have this chord. It sounds cool, but like, what comes after that?
Yeah, that chord is those two chords together are just like crazy, like work of genius.
I don't know if it's
so good.
But what exactly is this? I mean, it's obviously.
I never figured it out. I have no idea what it is. You have to tell me.
Yeah, I can't figure it out either. All right, well, we'll move on. And then the rest of this is like basically, okay, well, if you do, 2 fancy chords, you have to bring it back, right? You can't just like keep on doing weird, fancy dissonant chords because then people are just like, well, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
So you have to try to justify it. And so this is a much more like assonant chord, right? This is just
it's just
E major 9 or something.
It's a straight thing, yeah.
Yeah,
and it has the callback to the melody on top of it to further justify the section. Like, oh yeah, this is a thing. This is the thing that's grounded in reality,
Yep, exactly. It's not just all crazy shit. And this one's a little crazy, but it's like some version of a dissonant chord. It's some version of a diminished chord. So I don't know if it's that crazy. And then this is just like this starts to sound like future bass essentially. Like those are some very nice chords. And then the original draft of what I had that came after that was just, what is all this? It's all, it's just like whatever. We didn't use any of this in the end, because Infinity came up with something much better. And well, that something much better is this. You can't what? Oh shoot! My bad. All right, so the thing that's much better is this. So it's not the craziest chords in the world, but they are nice, and that's what matters here, right? And if we try and analyze this, it's like okay. Move on to piano roll. This is basically E flat major going to A flat major, back to E flat major. It's like pretty standard stuff. 1 4 1 4 something. I'm not good at music theory.
Yeah.
But
basically they're just very simple diatonic chords that just like work. They're just like bass, really simple. The idea so I discarded like 2 separate ideas for what this section would be. I I couldn't tell you why they didn't work. All I know is that I just couldn't massage them into shape, and I don't even remember what they are really. But there was a couple, like, so I struggled for a bit on what this section should be because it just threw some stuff out. What ended up sticking for some reason, I don't know, I couldn't tell you why, was the idea to basically do a reprise of all the main melody things that are through it. So I just stuck them all together back to back, including one melody from one of the very early sections of the song that hadn't appeared in a while. I was like, oh, let's just put that in here too. Why not?
But if it works, I mean, you can still. Here's so I remember if like you like to do like prototyping on the E piano,
Yeah.
and so here's a nice bit of that prototyping that stayed in the actual song. And so these are all like callbacks to old melodies.
Yeah. I will say that I did not know how to reharmonize that melody with the fifths that you did until I saw you do it in this early section. I was like, oh, okay, I could just do that. Okay, cool. Because I had been trying to do that for a while. I was like trying to put that melody places that made sense, but like it never worked because it's like crazy fifths going all the way up, and it just never works with the chords underneath it.
I guess so this one here, you mean that one?
Yeah.
Um,
Like the specific way that you wrote it in that earlier section, the section where you introduced it, it specifically only works with those chords. And I tried tons of other chords combinations underneath it and could not find a suitable one.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I ended up just repurposing one of the reharmonizations you wrote of it later, like in one of the drops, I think. And then I think it was in the very first section. You did like a I don't remember where you did it, but you did a version of it like on some like glockenspiel or something at some point in the song.
Oh, I remember now. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll just cop that. That makes sense. That works.
If it works, it works. Right?
Yeah.
So that's that, and then oh yeah, let me just play this here, pattern only. That's an obvious callback to that quote unquote catchy melody number one, right?
Yeah.
Which it ended up being something completely different in the end, but that's fine. That happens. And then there's like this nice, when you hit the climax and at the end of the my screen's blank, and you hit the end of this stuff here. And the idea was, okay, this is like towards the end of the adventure. If you were imagining a story to go with it, the story would be something like you're nearing the end of your chase, you're about to go back into your home world, and when you do, the monsters will stop chasing you. And like this is the moment where you like kind of cross the portal into your home world. And like obviously it's the climax, but also at the end of the climax, it needs to be like just you look around, it's like, oh, this is there's my desk. Right there's my so the idea was to have this like crazy kind of section here where all kinds of stuff were happening. It's just like your standard, end of a rock song type thing where everyone's kind of doing their own solo. And honestly, the solos here were easier to make than the drum section. Because like to do the solos, all you got to do is just like, oh, I know what notes in the scale I need to use, and I'm just going to put them randomly around in a way that kind of like they're adjacent to each other. So they sound something like this. So that was fine, right? The harder part for me was actually the drums. Because like originally Infinity made a kind of prototype of what the drums would sound like here, and it sounded something like this. And you can kind of tell how he made that, right? Where he took his keyboard.
I just played, yeah.
And just play those four notes, right? And it sounds great, and it sounded fine.
I'm not even good. I had to use two hands to play that.
I mean, if it works, right? But then, like, okay, well, how do I actually take those drums and then make it like a convincing, like drum solo out of it? And to be quite honest, it took a little bit of work, but you can still see, like, oh yeah, here's the four notes that Infinity kind of just banged out on his keyboard. But the key is just you just put kind of some tom hits over some hi-hats, random places, the cymbals I think really are what make it, right? Like people, you got to get those cymbals in, and like they're not put anywhere that's quantized. They're like all off the grid for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And so this took some iterating, like this nice little drum bit here. I'm gonna play that little drum roll. Because all drummers do drum rolls at some point, and if you don't do your drum rolls, then it's not going to sound like a real drummer. So that's a lesson, I guess. And now for the outro.
Yeah, the tag that says this is the final chord of the song. Yeah.
That is the final chord of the song.
Yeah, the reason that says that is because I actually wrote it separately before the outro was thin, and I was like, okay, yep, that's the last chord. I'm thinking it's gonna be that one. I'm gonna make that.
I think you made the outro before we made the intro. Like this came into existence before this did.
Yeah. That's
So
what I didn't know what the intro was gonna be. So like I was like the intro came in pretty late. It was like I had to
yeah,
figure out what was supposed to be there. But yeah,
I mean,
basically the way it was labbed together is I wrote the chord and then I did the section in the center, and then I went all the way back to do the intro.
I mean, like at that point, you had a good idea of like, okay, here's the vibe of like the frame of the track,
Yeah.
and so having the frames be the similar is quite important to a frame story. Um, so I guess something to talk about here is, I mentioned like, oh yeah, when you like go back home and you go through your portal and it's like all calm and quiet as an extreme kind of contrast to what you just went through. Um, it was actually kind of difficult to figure out, okay, how can I make this sound calm and empty and boring, but not actually boring, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of difficult. You can see that like there's all kinds of muted ideas here, stuff that we tried, but it didn't really work. Like here's an idea. Like here you can hear one of Infinity's brass kind of synth here. But I thought like, okay, if we have that synth there, it's going to sound too full, right? But I wanted to sound empty.
Yeah.
So we just kept that marimba there, and then it fills up a little bit with these chords, so that's like a nice little contrast.
Yeah.
Um,
About that section in there, basically this section is a reprise of a similar section near the beginning, but it starts in a different key zone because the drop before ends in a different key. So basically I had to do the same motions because it's like the reprise, but it has to end. Has to start in a different key and end in the same key, because the section after it is the same key. It's a little different than that. It's a little different than that because obviously in the original section, the mode just goes and changes the key anyway at the end. But it has to end in the same key center as the original one. So the basic way to do that was to do a funky chord like in the middle there, and that's the extended chord in the center. And then after
this
that,
one, right?
So that's not even close to the same chord as in the back. It's like a whole different thing, but it has some weird notes in it. And then from there, I can just sort of bounce around until I hit the chord I want to.
This is the one.
That's the one that goes directly into the key. It like resolves up by the typical, the typical way it's done.
Sound like this is such a nice exercise in modulation. I just
Yeah.
it's so nice. One thing I'm always scared of is like we hear this root is an F, but there's an F sharp. I'm always scared of flat twos. Like it's very clearly not a chord that you generally rest on.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
we do it here.
except the one that you did in the Tulip for Genji, I think. The one
Okay, sure. But anyway, ignoring that, this section is just a nice little reprise, and it like calms down a bit, and then there's the final chord. Because we're gonna talk about this final chord, it's a huge stack. It's all
basically. So famously, Jacob Collier talks about the super Lydian chord, right? It's the chord that, like, it's basically you start like in C, right, and then you stack a G on top of it, you stack a D on top of it, and you stack an A on top of it. It's like you stack like that basically, and it's super Lydian because it has the harmony of like a Lydian scale with the sharp 4 in it. But it just keeps sharpening forwards all the way up to infinity. This is going like this chord is going with the theme of that, but because we're doing a major minor harmony, this is stacked mixolydian instead. It's like super mixolydian chord. It goes up by a slightly different interval. So instead of doing like anytime you have like anytime you have a major chord in that super Lydian chord, you make it minor instead, and then you just start it on a different note, so the minors are different, so the majors are different, or it's something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then there's obviously like, and then the synth bass there, it pitches up slowly to detune from the Rhodes.
It does.
Yeah. And that makes it really that sort of thickens the structure of it, makes it like really really off kilter, but also like wide, sort of like.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. It gives it a nice And the funny thing is, I think at the end, in Jacob Collier's like mega Lydian thing, like there are very clearly notes at the top or after like a few iterations of applying the pattern that simply do not fit in the original key.
Yeah.
But I think everything here somehow fits in the original key, which is like
it's
really
yeah, it's very strange how it works out.
Which is it sounds very nice. Like you just play that and it's like it's not your typical chord, but you wouldn't, cry about it either. It's nice. So yeah, that's the end of the track. If anyone has any questions, now would be a good time. But anything you want to talk about, Infinity?
What did I want to talk about? It's cool. So you did the story, the story thing at the top. Those are all basically you sent me back a file like extending off of my original idea with all those markers at the top, and that was like the thing that was in my head. I didn't, because you didn't tell me about the story structure thing, and I hadn't learned it in that way in school. So when you have that section that's like find and meet the goddess, like I was like, oh, that's a real thing. That's like an actual, there's like an actual being there. And I made like, and sort of when I was writing it, I was envisioning this grand throne room and stuff, and it's like crazy.
It's I ended up being fun because this is like the ambient section, right? And you really killed it here. But like literally like when oh please, like but literally when I learned it in school, they literally called it meeting with a goddess, belly of the whale, right? Like that's what I remember.
Yeah.
So
I was taught I was taught a different story architecture that doesn't have that.
Yeah, it's the same idea either way.
Amazing.
Silver asks, when is the next album? I don't have any plans for another album. Albums are a lot of work, and I don't have time.
In the meantime, you should check out Echo Rift's Monolith album when that comes out.
Yes.
Because it will be cool, and you will like it.
Wait, Matt, do you have any albums planned?
No. Actually, I do have a game soundtrack that I'm sitting on. That I haven't pushed out yet. If you bother me enough, I'll release it fine.
Damn. Well, there you go. Well, it takes a lot more time to make a video game than it takes to make an album, so maybe people should play those instead.
Yeah, cool
Hmm.
video games. Buy Gem Sitter on Steam.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll eventually come out with another album eventually, but it's gonna be a while.
So I work on other game soundtracks for other developers. Not right now, unfortunately. I have done like a few. I've done a few like short 1 minute doodles for some people, like friends and stuff. Uh, but nothing like paid or anything.
I mean that'll probably change soon enough.
Yeah, eventually that will not be that way. um,
All right. If that is all, then let us wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Feel free, if you want to know anything else, just ask. And thanks, Matt, for embarking on this journey of a collab.
yeah,
And also, you should check out our set that we ended up doing for Dreamwood. I believe that's also uploaded on Infinity's YouTube.
yeah. The set is cool. We have some song selections that are we're both, or I, at least one of us is very passionate about. Every single song in there. They're all really good.
Oh, they're all
I
super
mean,
cool.
I listened to all of them when I was putting together the video, and I was like, these are all bangers. Like they're so good. Um, and it was really fun to put that together. Maybe I could like at some point go into like the basic code I wrote to get that thing working and stuff, and the thought process behind a lot of the visuals. But that's like not now. That's not a now thing. Uh, yeah, super cool. Super stoked to have done this with you because like we did a collab for Gem Center, and that was like I liked it. It was cool. It wasn't big enough. I wanted a bigger one. So this is like the exact thing that we were hoping to do like from the very beginning.
Yeah, I've been wanting to collab on Infinity with Matt on something like this for a while, so this was very nice.
Yeah.
Mario asks, where do you get most music ideas from? Uh, uh, I don't know. Is the short answer. The real answer is for me. I don't know how Matt works, but for me, it's really um. You ever when you're in the shower, you just stand there and you think, okay, what you just think about music, right? And you start to imagine like, oh, here's a made up track, but it's not like a song that like already exists. It's like a kind of conglomeration of the kind of all the music that you've ever heard in your life, and you kind of start playing with ideas, and you're playing with, oh, what if this idea in music, but with this kind of execution, right? So that's where a lot of my music actually starts. It's basically in the shower as a shower thought. Um, and then in the process of making a track, I need to come up with like some idea to put in, or I just don't know what to do for a section. One trick I like is either I just stop working on music for a while and I just listen to some music, any random music, and usually by the time I come back from that, the intuition for what to do is pretty obvious. But if I need to like come up with something right there on the spot, um, kind of generating a situation where you're in the shower, but like just not thinking about anything and just letting your mind sit there in nothingness until it thinks of something. That tends to be pretty good. Um,
Yeah, Step from Newgrounds is a similar approach where he just like literally walks around, paces like in circles until he thinks of a section.
yeah, that's a pretty good way to do it. Would you have anything else you want to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, my the way so lately I've been doing a lot of video game music because I've been making video games and they need music. Um, and the basic idea behind those is you have some kind like you have a vibe that you want to do. You have something that you want them to feel when they listen to it, and you think, okay, um, I like well obviously there's a lot of references to go off of, but I usually just sort of sit at a piano and start doing a lot of I mean, vaguely you could call it research, but it's just like me picking out chords, putting them next to each other, and seeing if they give the vibe, right? Um, And then eventually you sort of eventually you usually sort of assemble into something with some combination of something you heard in a reference and something that you were sort of doing yourself, like, oh, that works out well here. Um, and then that sort of turns into a section, and then you write it from there. Um, that's where a lot of the ideas are starting out, as I'm doing like video game stuff. Like one obvious example of that was when I did the D-flop thing, and it was like, okay, so we got this game that's like very much like wordless, like it's got nothing to it. So I was thinking of, when I was trying to reflect that in music, I'm like, okay, I've got to write some music that's relatively wordless, like it doesn't have like crazy fullness to it, but it still has to like be sort of ambient stuff. And so then the idea of doing a synth brass solo, that's where that came from. So I wrote synth brass solos for the whole thing, and that just sort of that aligned so well with what I was trying to put on the screen at that time, that I kept going with it. And that's how that happened in particular. And then obviously there's more other ideas there's for other games and stuff like that. So that's my approach nowadays.
That makes sense. Synth brass for the win.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it? Your name?
One Infinity is canon as the version of it that I made when I was 14.
Okay.
Today, I pretty much like, you can call it One Infinity, Infinity, or Infinity. Any of those were fine. One Fluency has never been canon, but I take that too. I would say that's less legitimate than all the other ones, but yeah, any of those are fine.
Nice. Yeah, I can never really tell.
I live in a Schrodinger's quantum entanglement of all three of those, where it's only one of them when you say it,
and it immediately ceases to be one, and it becomes all possibilities when it is not being said.
Yeah, basically.
I see. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and well, maybe we'll have something like this again in the future.
Yes,
And,
I will do more behind the scenes for other big projects that I do. It will definitely happen.
I should probably start doing this. It's definitely a lot to.
Cool. Where is my mouse? I don't know where my mouse is, so I can't click the end stream button on YouTube. This is a problem. This is a problem. Look at the cursors. Hey, YouTube, you missed the cursors.
Oh my god, the cursors are worse.
That's the cursors.
What happened?
You missed that. Where did my mouse go? There it is. Wait. Okay. Oh, it's gone again. Okay. Cool. I will end the stream. Thanks for coming. This vlog will be available on YouTube. You probably don't need to hear me say that, because it's going to be at the very end of the video. All right.
What's up with those cursors, man? All right. Peace out, all.
Yeah, bye.